If I may say so myself, I am the most noteworthy engineer on the Empire. Even Queen Victoria herself enjoyed the sight and display of wonders of the automation I created. At the evening of my knighting, Her Majesty whispered to me, "We have been tricked into believing that your mechanical men were actually alive." That is just how realistic my clockwork imitations of humans were. My secret was all based on knowledge of the human body. Then it was all a matter of treating the machine as if it were a real organ. Pistons contracted like muscles. Springs pulled like sinew. This is the reason I am in the place that I am. One morning, my whole world was shattered when I read a note in the Times about the atrocities on the rubber plantations in the Congo. The European companies had efficiently enslaved the whole of the native population and were treating them with cruelty like none I've ever heard before. Beatings, lashings, widespread killing, and above all the horror, frequent mutilation. It was common for them to cut off the hands of a boy or girl when the production quotas were not met. The article I read had printed photographs. They showed the victims with crudely sutured stumps at the end of their arms, done in a way that couldn't possibly heal properly. The execution tool must have been some sort of dull knife or rusty axe that would leave this kind of ghastly wound. Then their medics, who were clearly incompetent, would leave sutures hardly capable of allowing proper healing or keeping out infection. Excuse me if I'm being too graphic, but it is impossible for someone like me, who pays so much attention to every detail, especially to every detail of the human body, to ignore the sensation that a victim of violent amputation must have felt. Looking at that wound was as if the torture was performed on me at that very moment. The image I saw that morning on the paper haunted me for months until I decided to close my shop in London and travel to the Congo to find a way to help the natives. There I opened a small dispensary where I crafted artificial hands for the victims. Please forgive again my professional arrogance, but I have to say that the results were astonishing. Not only the mechanical limbs worked almost like the real thing, but they looked accurate with their elastic rubber coating. One night, my door crashed down under the force of a platoon of the company's mercenaries. They said that my efforts were thwarting their disciplinary measures, and that if I kept with them, their exorbitant product quotas would fail. Before I could reply, they threw me in jail. They would have executed me if I weren't a member of the British aristocracy, but they did all they could to torture my psyche. They placed me in a cell adjacent to where the natives they no longer deemed useful were made an example of. Every single time the victim made eye contact with me at the moment of the punishment, and every single time the severed hand would fall inches away from the bars of my cell, I could easily catch them if I could stand to reach out and grab one. For moments or whether years, I saw in daytime and in my dreams the whites of every victim's eyes. I learned their words for please, forgive me, and help me. I heard them scream and smell their blood on my food, all the while being haunted by the knowledge that in a single day's work I could craft them back their lives if only I could have back my tools and cogs. Some days when I opened my eyes and could not tell what was flesh and what machinery was. Bones looked like rods, muscles were gears, blood was oil, and skin was rubber. In my delirium, I could see my own hands detach from my body, feel what they felt, but have no control over them. They reached out of my cell and grabbed one of the many severed limbs laying on the floor. Then another. And then another. My fingers toying with those dead fingers like I did with my mechanical devices. That night, I stared at the prison guards. They were not aware of what was going on. There were noises behind the walls. The guards thought them as rats, but I knew what they really were. A shadow crawled up the beams above their heads. They dismissed it as a tropical tarantula, but I could see its shape clearly from my cell. I sat silently as the fake spider reached behind them to grab the prison keys. By the time the guards realized that something was afoot, it was too late. The bars of my cell were hanging on their hinges and I was nowhere to be found. The guards tried to shout alarm, but fell prey before being able to. Several pairs of blood-covered hands that came from the darkness directly to their throats. The guards died trying to see the face of their attacker, but could not see any. The next morning, more than 70 company officers and mercenaries were found strangled by a faceless enemy that left no other clue than bloody fingerprints all over their bodies. It all happened so fast that it was as if the avenging force had 140 arms, all grasping at them. The breath of the slave drivers. Through the following weeks, I made quietly my way back to London, where I opened a small watch repair shop in the poor district of Whitechapel. Life here was serene, if tedious. There are news of a series of murders of street-walking harlots. Their internal and external organs removed for unknown purposes. Alas, I find those news to be just as boring. Good thing I have my handiwork to keep me occupied.